I think we can all agree that the cost of graphics cards has gone through the roof in the last few years. But there are great deals to be had if you're willing to buy used. Now, one of the easiest ways to find a used graphics card is by accessing a website like eBay. But then the question becomes, how do I score one of those great graphic card deals without getting burned by an unscrupulous seller? We're going to be looking at steps that you can take to protect yourself and get a really nice card at a discount price, and that's coming up right now, right here on Tech Talk. So I wanted to start off this video with a little bit of a story about my own GPU buying mistake. It was a big mistake that I made that I really regret and feel kind of stupid about. Now, normally when I buy computer parts, I usually go on Amazon, I go on Newegg, and I buy whatever I need. And for some reason, I never really think of buying used. I don't know why. For my computer parts, used has just never been a thing with me. And it doesn't mean I don't buy things used generally. When you look at my camera collection, at one point I had about 14 cameras, and now I'm down to 8 or 9, but virtually all the cameras I have now were bought used, including the camera that I'm using to shoot this video on. So going on eBay and buying used stuff I have no problem with, but for some reason with computers I never have. So recently I was putting together kind of a fooling around computer out of spare parts. It's a Ryzen 5 4500 on a B450M motherboard with 8 gigs of RAM. I was just using it for making videos like this. I was experimenting with Linux, doing a few other things. But the problem I had, because that Ryzen 5 4500 doesn't have an integrated GPU, I needed some kind of graphics card to, put video out, to get my video output. And because it was just a fooling around computer, I didn't want to spend any money on it. This wasn't a computer I was using for anything serious. I wouldn't be gaming on it or doing content creation. So I just did what I always do. I went on Amazon. I thought I'll just find the cheapest name brand graphics card I can get. So what I ended up getting was this. It's a Zotac GT710. Now, if you're not familiar with this graphics card, it's probably because these are really built for office machines. They're built for exactly my scenario. When you've got a CPU that's got no graphics built in, and there's no integrated graphics, you can put this in just about any machine. It doesn't take a lot of power, and it'll give you that graphics output that you need. It's really not a performer. This thing's got 2 gigabytes of DDR3 VRAM in it. You can't game on it. You can't do content creation on it. It's strictly for office use. And I ended up paying $130 for this. Now, at the time, that was fine because it met my needs. That's all I needed. I was just fooling around with some operating systems. I just needed to get graphics out. I wasn't expecting anything else. The reason that was a dumb decision is because I went and bought new for $130, something that met my needs in the moment, and I wasn't thinking about what could happen down the road or making a computer that was workable for other scenarios. So that was kind of stupid on my part. Sure enough, a couple months later, I'm using this computer and I want to do things that are a little more intensive with it. I want to try gaming on Linux. I want to try content creation on Linux. I need a little bit more graphics card than that. I don't need a lot because it's not going to be a dedicated, gaming computer by any means. I just want to experiment, and it'll be connected to a 1080p monitor, but this isn't going to be useful for any of that. So I realized that I just bought a graphics card a couple of months ago. Again, I didn't want to spend a whole lot of money, so out of sheer desperation, I thought maybe I'll check eBay. And what I ended up getting was what's in this box here. And this is a GTX 1660 Super. Now, I paid $150 for this, so only $20 more than I paid for this brand new GT710. But instead of the 2 gigabytes of DDR3 RAM in here, I have 6 gigabytes of DDR6 RAM here. And the GTX 1660 Super is many orders of magnitude more powerful than this little Zotac. You can do 1080 gaming on it. You can do some 1080 content creation on it. No, it's not the fastest, most powerful thing in the world, but it is light years ahead of this GPU. And like I say, it was only $20 more expensive. So this is a case where I went out and I spent money. I didn't really evaluate my needs very well and ended up regretting it because basically the $130 I spent on this was a total waste of cash. I will use this in another computer, but I still regret getting it. I should have done this in the first place. So the reason I'm telling you this story is it really underscores the fact that sometimes used really is better. And the thing I learned shopping for this is that the price difference between a used GPU and a brand new GPU is actually quite wide. I'm used to buying used cameras, and I found lately that the cost, well, not lately, over the past several years, the cost of a used camera isn't a whole lot less than new cameras. You don't save tons. You save some, but it's not a huge gap. I think maybe that's why I never really looked at used computer parts, is because I always just sort of assumed the same. But when I went on eBay and I started shopping for this, I realized that actually the price difference is huge. So used parts can really work out, but you have to know what you're doing because it's very, very easy to get burned on something like this. So now that we've talked about why buying used is effective and why it's a good idea, let's talk about the things that we can do to make sure we get the good deal we're expecting and we don't get burned. Let's take a look at the steps that you can take then to protect yourself from an unscrupulous eBay seller, somebody that might be selling an item on eBay but is looking to take advantage of you. And the first thing that we need to do is really look carefully at the eBay listing. Now what I did was I saved the actual listing from the GPU that I bought. I saved it as an image so we can take a look at it even if it was taken off of eBay. So let's see the things that we can look at to make sure that this listing is legitimate and that we're dealing with a reputable seller. So when we look at this listing, the first thing I always look at is right here at the top, how much feedback does the seller have? Now in this case, there's 466 reviews and 100% of them are positive. So that's a really good sign. Basically, of all the people he's sold to that are listed on the site, nobody really had anything bad to say. There were no complaints. Now that's not good enough though. You really have to dig a little bit deeper into who your seller is. So if we scroll down the eBay listing, we get to this section, which does tell you a little bit more about the quality of this seller. The first thing I notice is that he sold 836 items on eBay. So this isn't somebody that's just doing it casually here and there, and the feedback might be hit and miss. Maybe some things work out well, maybe some things don't. But he's somebody that probably is doing this for a business, or at the very minimum, he's a regular eBay user. So he sold 136 items. I've got 437 items of feedback here. And again, he's 100% positive feedback. Now, I always look to make sure that some of this feedback, at least some of it, is recent. Because what can happen is people have great feedback for a long time where they're selling items, and all of a sudden something happens to them personally, something happens to their business, their quality of the service goes downhill. So here I've got one item from the past month. I've got several from the past 6 months. Again, they're all positive. Everybody just has good things to say. So I know that the strength of his service is continuing right up to the present time. I'm not looking at reviews that are, 2-3 years old and maybe things have changed. So that is all really good to see. Again, he's been on eBay for 3 years. So he's been around a long time. So between the amount of time he's been on eBay, between the fact that all of his feedback has been positive and he's still an active seller, I've got a pretty good idea that this guy is probably legitimate and there's less of a chance I'm going to get taken advantage of because he's obviously got a history of giving people good deals. Now, the other thing I like to look at when I'm doing a purchase like this is I like to buy things in country. So this item was in Calgary, Alberta. That's just a few hundred kilometers from where I am in Edmonton, Alberta. And there's a number of reasons why buying in country makes a lot of sense. The first is obviously the shipping is a whole lot faster. You got less distance, it's going to get to you faster, but also because it's not going across a border, you don't have customs delays. I bought stuff out of the States shipped by the postal services that has spent days and days and sometimes weeks in customs just waiting for, the customs to get sorted out and have it released so I can actually get it brought to my house. So you get that faster shipping, and that also means that if you have a problem with the order, it's going to get back to the seller, your return, all that much faster, again without a problem going across the border. So for those reasons, if you can, buying in country makes a lot of sense. It's faster to get the product. It's faster to return it if you have to. But there's also the fact that the shipping is cheaper and you avoid tariffs and taxation generally. Now, sales taxes you may have to pay, but you're not going to pay duties and tariffs coming across the border. And as you and I both know, for all of our countries these days, it doesn't matter whether you're in the European Union, you're in the States, you're in Canada, tariffs have become a big issue. So what you don't want is to buy an inexpensive GPU like this for $150 and find out you've got, $50, $60, $70 worth of tariffs and duty to pay. That'd be terrible. So for all those reasons, these days, if you can buy in country, that's great. It'll save you time, it'll save you frustration, it'll likely save you money. Now, we mentioned how buying in country means that if you have to make a return, it happens a whole lot faster. And that's an important thing to think about whenever you're making a purchase off of eBay or any other site of a used item. And it's important to understand what returns mean. For instance, if you look here, the seller has listed on this one that no returns are accepted. So that means if I get this graphics card and I decide it doesn't fit my case, or I just don't like it, or I found something better, the seller doesn't want me sending it back. He's not accepting a return from me. That does not mean that if the graphics card doesn't work, or if it's not the graphics card I purchased, or if there's something else that's wrong with it, I can't send it back. Because as we note here, eBay has a money-back guarantee. If you don't get the item you ordered, your money comes back. So the seller won't accept a return if you change your mind, but eBay will always cover you if the seller doesn't send you what it was that you ordered or what you get is defective. So under those circumstances, eBay's got you covered. You will be able to get your money back in most cases as long as you can prove that what you got wasn't what the seller was advertising. So there's two different types of returns. It's good to understand the difference between the two. If you're absolutely sure that what you're buying is what you want, then it's okay to have a seller that says no returns accepted because you're not going to be returning it anyway. If you're a little unsure, you might want to have a seller that does accept returns because that'll let you bring it to your home, try it out, make sure it works for you, and then send it back if it's not what you wanted. Now, in addition to those things, the next thing to look at is we really want to look very carefully at the item description on these items. So let's go down to the item description and note what the seller has written there. So what I like about this seller is he's been very, very explicit in what he's selling. Anybody that's very vague, like just says, oh, you know, NVIDIA GTX 1660 graphics card, good condition. Yeah, that might not be the best seller in the world because vagueness, it leaves room for misunderstanding or for slipping in maybe something that isn't really worth the money that was asked. But in this case, the seller not only, first of all, he's told me exactly what he's selling. It's an MSI NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1660 Super Ventus XS OC 6GB GDR6 graphics card. So he's given me the exact model. I can go online, I can look all that up, and I know exactly what card I'm getting, what the specifications are, who made it, etc. But even went beyond that. He says benched and stress tested for 3+ hours with maximum temp at 67 degrees and no artifacts. Now, why that's helpful for me is because if I get this graphics card out of the box and I do the same thing, I stress test it and I get a bunch of artifacts and the thing overheats, what this seller has done is he's given me a room for me to go back to eBay and say, hey, this was the claim made on the listing and the claim didn't measure up. I stress tested this thing, it overheats, it has artifacts, it's no good. So the fact that he's willing to put that on the listing shows that he's really, really confident that this card is going to work because he wouldn't give that wiggle room, that sort of ability for a buyer to get out of the purchase if he wasn't really confident that this thing was going to work. So I really like to see that. The other thing he says is that there's minor cosmetic scuffs on the shroud and the back plate as per the photos. Now, why I like that is because it shows that he's being really honest. He's not trying to sell you something that he's blowing up to be more than it is. He's being very clear at what the defects are in this thing. And if we look, because this is just a printout, of course, I can't click on the pictures, but he included a whole slew of pictures with very, very close-up images of the shroud, of the fan, of every little scuff, every little mark. There was photos of the input-output ports, like the HDMI port, the display port. He had a close-up of the power connector. He's got close-ups of everything you'd want to see to make sure this thing is good. And those are the things you want to see. You want to see the I/O ports, you want to see the power connector, you want to see the PCIe pins in a close-up, because those are all the things that if there's something wrong with them, it's going to affect the usability of the card. So you really want to see that all the fan blades are there and that everything is in the kind of operating condition you expect. Having those really close-up pictures really helps you determine what kind of shape that card is in before it gets shipped to you, so that when you open the box, it's not going to be a surprise. And for that reason, don't ever buy a GPU, a used GPU, where they're using stock photos. Sometimes people will take a photo from, the MSI website or wherever else. It's just a stock image that they got. It's not a photo of the actual product you're buying. I would never buy a product under those conditions. I want to see not only the general photograph like you're seeing here, but I want to see those detailed pictures, and I want to see the pictures of anything that is less than perfect or slightly flawed on the card. And that's exactly what this seller did. Everywhere where he said there's scuffs and marks, he took a close-up picture to show exactly the extent of the damage. So because of these close-up pictures, because of the detail put into that description, I'm pretty confident this is an honest seller, not to mention the fact that he's got such great reviews on the site. Now, there is one other thing that you might want to be aware of. I didn't worry about it on this GTX 1660 Super because it's unlikely to be an issue, but if you're buying a very high-end graphics card or a graphics card that was high-end a few years ago, you might want to ask if it's ever been used in crypto mining. And the only reason is if a card's used in mining, it doesn't mean it's going to be a bad card. It doesn't mean it's necessarily not as good as any other GPU. It does mean it's going to have a lot of hours on it under load. So certainly if a card's been used in mining, you probably want to be getting a better price than on a comparable card that hasn't been used in mining, just because it's had so many more hours on it and it's been used pretty extensively. So the mining thing is something you want to keep an eye on. It usually only applies to higher end cards, but it might be a question worth asking. Now, before you go ahead and pull the plug on a GPU like this, you want to confirm how much power supply you need. Now, you can go to the MSI website, you can go to the NVIDIA website, and you can check it out, and they'll often give you a general idea of what power supply you need for a particular card. So you can Google, NVIDIA GeForce 1660 Super recommended power supply, and they'll give you, a recommended power supply. Or you can go to a website like Build a PC, which I recommend, and you can use their power supply calculator to get a more exact idea of whether or not your computer can take a power supply or take a GPU like this. And so on those websites, and I'll have the link to the Build a PC here, on those websites, what you do is you put in your motherboard, you put in your CPU, you put in all the fans you have, all the drives you have, everything that you have attached to your computer that uses electricity, including the new GPU, and it'll give you a recommended power supply. It'll tell you the likely wattage that you'll be drawing maximum on that computer, and then how much power supply you need. Because keep in mind, whatever your maximum draw is, however many watts your computer uses at peak, you want to have a power supply that's somewhat bigger than that by 15, 20%, because you want to have that bit of extra headroom. So my recommendation is to always use a power supply calculator to get exact number. But if you just want to ballpark it, just Google the graphics card, and say recommended power supply after the type of graphics card, and you'll come up with a number that's probably close enough. Now, after you've gone through the listing, you've decided to pull the trigger, you've decided to purchase this thing, it's come to your house, there's some steps you want to take post-purchase to make sure you got what you paid for. Let's take a look at that. Now, I haven't even really had a chance to get this GPU out of the box since I got it. Prior to starting this video, I hadn't even opened it. So I just sliced open the tape. We're going to take a look at what's inside. Now, I note the packaging is a little bit odd, and that often happens with eBay sellers. You're not buying necessarily from a business that's going to have professional packing. So this guy used, I don't know, some kind of clear piece of leftover packaging and a manual. He's used some pieces of cardboard, some leftover packing material. That doesn't bother me in the slightest. It just means this guy probably isn't doing eBay necessarily as a primary business. But then here's my graphics card. It's nicely wrapped up in bubble wrap, which is good to see. So it looks like it's been reasonably well protected all the way through. So let's take a look at what's inside here. Of course, when you're cutting all this open, you want to be really, really careful you don't cut through to the GPU, because that can cause problems for you as well. It's best not to do this in a hurry. Okay, there we go. It's also nice to see that he took the care to put this in an anti-static bag, because of course any kind of electronics we want to protect from static electricity. I'm standing on a concrete floor in bare feet, so I'm fine in terms of that as well. And there is my new MSI GTX 1660 Super. And just looking at it, everything looks to be pretty much the way this gentleman said it was going to be. Now, one of the things that you should always look for, and even in the listing when you're shopping, is this little sticker you see on the back. What that is the warranty seal. And they always put one on one of the screws, or it'll be somewhere where if this GPU has been taken apart by anybody, that sticker will either be damaged or missing. So when you've got the warranty seal on your GPU, and usually it's on these backplate screws, because you need to get these screws out in order to take the GPU apart. Usually if that seal is still there, it means the GPU has never been disassembled. And that's a good thing, because often people that disassemble GPUs, they don't know what they're doing and they put it back together in a way that this thing might be inclined to overheat or have other issues. So I always like to see that seal. Now, people will be critical sometimes and say, oh, well, people can re-glue the seal back on and they can figure out a way to make it look like it. And that's true. But the reality is, if you buy a GPU and in the listing or when you get it, that seal is broken, you can guarantee 100% it's been tampered with. If the seal is here, probably there's a 98% chance it hasn't been. So this one still has the seal on it. I'm pretty confident that this hasn't been messed with. Now, I'm going to quickly take a look and just make sure everything's in good shape. So we're going to look at the I/O ports. There's no visible damage there. Everything's in good shape. The power connector here, you want to make sure that that's in good shape as well. No visible signs of damage. And you want to make sure there's no signs of melting. Especially in higher end GPUs lately, there's been issues with these melting because of the high amounts of power that they take. And so it's good to see that that's totally intact and there's no signs of it being overheated. Now, this seller included a cover over the PCIe connectors. So we're going to take that cover off. And what we're looking at is we're looking at all these little copper strips where this GPU is going to connect to my motherboard. And what you want to see is you want to make sure that there's not too much wear on there. If they're really worn, then this thing has been, pulled out and put in and pulled out and put in into multiple devices. That could be a sign that it was used in crypto mining as well. Now, what you might notice, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but on this one, you can see the second to last pin is a bit shorter than all the others. That's actually very, very common to have that one shorter. So if you see one or more that's a little bit shorter, as long as it doesn't look broken, that's fine. That's part of the manufacturing. And so all of those connections look just fine. Now what we're going to do, this one actually looks really, really clean. I think that the seller did a good job cleaning it. We're just going to give it a little bit of a blow with some compressed air, because you never know what's inside one of these things. And what you don't want is probably to put something in your computer that's got dust from somebody else's house or dog hair or goodness only knows what else. So whenever I use compressed air like this, I always hold my fans down, because it's quite easy to put too much air pressure in there to spin them too fast and damage the bearings. So I'm just going to very gently hold the centers. Yeah, I don't see anything coming out of this, so I think this guy did a pretty good job of cleaning this out. If you blow it all off and there's still dust and stuff in here, you can take a dusting brush to it, or even a paintbrush, a soft bristle paintbrush, and give it a gentle brush as you blow, and that'll get the rest of the dust and yuck off. So now that we've done that, we're pretty much ready to go ahead and put this in our machine. We know that it looks like the description. We know that it's clean. We know that all the connectors and everything work. The cooling fins are all in place. The fans spin freely. The blades are all there. I don't see any blade damage. We've done a good job inspecting this. Let's get it into the machine. And we're going to do a couple of things to make sure that, first of all, this is the exact GPU that was promised, and to make sure it performs the way it was promised. So we're going to do that right now. So now I've installed my GPU and the necessary drivers. I'm going to go ahead and install a couple of utilities that will help us to fully check out this new graphics card. The first is we're going to install a utility called GPU-Z. To do that, we're going to go to techpowerup.com/GPU-Z. And that takes you to this page. And all you need to do is select this button, download GPU-Z, and then hit download again, and GPU-Z will download, and then you just need to install GPU-Z. What GPU-Z does is it reads the hardware on your graphics card and allows you to verify that your graphics card is exactly what you're expecting and exactly what the seller of your graphics card described. Because what can happen, your seller can say it's a certain kind of graphics card. They can even put a sticker on the graphics card that says it is what they said it is. But the one thing they can't do is they can't change what the hardware says it is. So by using GPU-Z, you're actually going in and identifying what the hardware identifies itself as, which makes sure that graphics card is exactly the make and model that you're anticipating. The second thing we want to download is something called FurMark. And for that, you go to a website called geeks3d.com/FurMark. And you scroll to the bottom of the page, you're going to hit download. And what we're downloading is FurMark, which is a graphics card benchmarking software. What this is going to do, it's going to stress test your graphics card. It's going to run it at 100% for basically as long as you want. It's going to tell you how well it's performing, and it's going to make sure that it doesn't overheat and doesn't have artifacts and other errors in it. So for this computer, we're going to download the Win64 setup version. So we click on that, it'll download, we go ahead and install it. I've already done that to save a little bit of time. So at this point, I've got my NVIDIA drivers installed, I've got CPU-Z installed, I've got FurMark installed. I'm going to do a quick restart of my computer, and then we're going to check out to make sure this graphics card is everything that I think it is. So we're going to log back in here. And let's start with GPU-Z. So we're going to open up GPU-Z, and let's see what it has to say about our graphics card. Okay, so we can see on screen here, the name of my graphics card is the GeForce GTX 1660 Super. That is awesome. That's what it's supposed to be. And we have 6 gigabytes of GDDR6 memory, which is what a 1660 is supposed to have. So basically, I can be pretty confident that this is the correct card because the hardware is telling me it's the card that I paid for. There is more information here. You can look at your hotspot temperatures. You can look at your frequency that your GPU is running at, the amount of voltage it's using, etc. GPU-Z is a really great application to give you basically a whole lot of information about the status of your graphics card. So now we're going to close that off, and we're going to run one more test, and that's FurMark, which is what we downloaded as well. Now, what FurMark is going to do, and you can see here FurMark has identified my GPU. It's going to do a 1080 test because I'm running a 1080 monitor. And what it does is it's going to run my graphics card at 100%. So it's going to max out the ability of that graphics card, and it's going to keep doing that basically until I tell it to stop. And there's a couple of things we want to look for. We want to look for how much it heats up. We don't want it to exceed its maximum temperature. The GPU hotspot temperature for this particular card, 100 degrees is really kind of the ceiling where it's going to start to throttle, so we don't want to see it get anywhere near that on the hotspot. And the other thing we're going to do while this is running, you don't want to start running it and then walk away. You want to watch your screen, because if you get artifacts or other visual distortions, that means your graphics card could be having a hard time under stress as well, and there could be an issue with it. So you want to look at the temperature, and if it does get too hot, you want to shut the test down. And the second thing you want to do is check to make sure that it's giving you a good reproduction of the image while it's being tested. So this software is really easy. I just double-clicked on it to start it. All we're going to do is we're going to hit run. And let's see how that comes up here. So what we can see up in the upper left, it's telling me that in this test I'm getting 81 FPS. Pretty good number for the GTX 1660. You can see my GPU temp is 50 degrees now. My GPU hotspot is 64 degrees. The GPU usage is at 100%. So this is running as fast as it can, as hard as it can, and we're just going to watch and see how the temperatures build up. Now, the case I have this in isn't the best case for doing this, I'll admit. Like I say, this was an old scrap case I had kicking around. The ventilation isn't great. I only have one 120 mil exhaust fan in it, so it's not getting lots of air either. So considering it's in a case that doesn't have a whole lot of cooling in it in the moment, it's doing just fine. Now, typically what you'd want to do on a test like this is you want to let it run a while. 15 minutes to half an hour is usually pretty good. And just to make sure that, the temperature plateaus at a reasonable level, it doesn't spike to get too hot. And during that time, you want to keep watching this image to make sure that the image doesn't end up getting distorted or messed up as well. So you can see now my GPU is up to 74 degrees. It's still climbing. And this is the 125 watt graphics card as well. And so it's kind of interesting when you see at the bottom here, it's showing you the wattage it's using. It's currently using 123 watts. So you know it's really maxed out because it's using pretty much all of its thermal design power. So after you've run that test for a while and you're satisfied that everything's working well with your graphics card, what comes next? Well, at this point, you've basically gotten your graphics card. You know it's the card that you asked for. You know the performance is fine. You know it's not overheating. You know there's no issues with the image it's generating. Guess what? You're ready to go. You are good to now download some of your favorite video games and start playing. You've got yourself a really nice graphics card. You didn't pay full retail for it. You probably got a decent discount. And best of all, you got exactly what you were asking for. So let's review kind of what we learned today about buying a used graphics card on a site like eBay or basically anywhere else really. There's 7 steps to take to make sure that you get the deal you're thinking that you're getting and you're not getting taken by somebody. The first is always confirm the seller in the listings. Make sure the person selling the graphics card is a reputable seller on the platform. He's got good reviews, and more importantly, he's got good recent reviews. Second, check carefully the item description to make sure it's legit. It is what it says it is. It's detailed, so you know exactly which model of graphics card you're getting. And check the photographs. There should be photographs of the actual item, and those photographs should include really clear shots of anything that the seller's disclosing is maybe amiss with that item, any scratches, any scuffs, because that's a good sign that your seller is honest. The third thing you want to do, you want to verify the power supply requirement. You want to know how much power supply you need to power that graphics card and make sure that you've either got that in your computer already or you're prepared to buy an adequate power supply. Now, once you've done all that, if you know that you've got a power supply for the card, you're confident that the seller and the listing are good, you can purchase it, you bring it to your home, you take it out of the box. The fourth thing you need to do is you need to do a careful physical inspection. Check the I/O ports, check the power connector, check the fan, check the cooling fins, and ideally check to make sure that warranty seal is on there. And that warranty seal is something you should look for as well when you're examining the original listing. The warranty seal to me is always a really good sign that the card hasn't been tampered with. The fifth thing you want to do is give that card a quick clean. You saw even though the card I got was very, very clean, I still gave it a blowout just to make sure it had been thoroughly cleaned out and there wasn't a bunch of crap sitting there inside the GPU. After that, your sixth step is to go ahead and install your card. You do the physical install into your case, remove the old graphics card driver, install the new graphics card drivers. And then the last thing you want to do is check that that graphics card is what it says it is on the outside by using GPU-Z to verify the model. And then you want to use FurMark to stress test it to make sure that it's generating graphics appropriately and it's not overheating. When you've done those 7 things, you have made yourself a really good GPU purchase. And if something goes wrong during that, if during your inspection when you get it, there's an error, if there's a problem when you use FurMark or GPU-Z, you're going to have all the evidence that you need, especially if you've been using eBay, to return that card because it wasn't what the seller said. Now, as always make sure you understand what your return policies are, both for the seller and for the platform. If you do all of those things, the chances are you're going to do just fine buying your very own discount used graphics card. I hope you found this video helpful and there's some information there that you can use. Once again, I'm Graham Hughes. Leave your comments down below. I'm always happy to respond to those. If you like this video, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And I'll look forward to seeing you on the next video. Oh yeah, there's one thing I almost forgot. I was working away on this case, cleaning up the wiring and installing a second fan, and I remembered that I had done that FurMark stress test on the old GT710. Check out the score it got. It was only able to do 4 FPS on the FurMark test. Now this GTX 1660, if you remember, was averaging about 80 FPS. So it shows you just how big a gap there is between this used card and the new one I had bought, even though the price difference was only 20 bucks. That's it. Catch you next time.